So, who are you? I invite all of you right now to think of 3 words that you would use to describe who you are. You can either write it down on one of those little sticky notes that you have, or just put it into your head. How would you describe who you are? In just 3 words. For some of you, it might come quite quickly. For others, maybe you'll stop at 2 and be unsure. That's okay. Think of what those 3 words are that you would use to describe who you are. I'm not going to ask you to share it, but I just want you to think that as we're getting started. If you had asked me a while ago, there are 3 words that would come to mind right away. And for you, if you're like the majority of most people, you probably use one of these words to describe yourself. It could be your nationality, your gender, your profession, and if you're a student right now, that is your profession, and you're very good at it. Or it could be something about your personality. Maybe it's your ethnicity, your race. It could be about your religion, your family, or one of many other ways you use to describe yourself. If you had asked me 7 years ago, I probably would have described myself with these 3 words: curious, Canadian, teacher. After decades of wanting to become a teacher, training to become a teacher, and being a teacher, it became a major part of who I am. However, it took only one very special year to change all of that. In the fall of 2014, my wife, Ayako, and I were going away for a weekend trip. And one of the major topics of discussion during that trip was my wife's future career plans. And she said to me, "Doug, if I just traveled for a year and looked for a job after that, would that be okay with you?" And my first reaction was, yeah, of course, that sounds fantastic. Take some time to see the world, meet new people, have some new experiences, and then look for a job after that. We'll be fine. As the trip and the conversation continued, all of a sudden we started thinking, well, wouldn't it be great if we both quit our jobs and traveled for a year? Now, at this point in the talk, I should stop to just say that recently my wife reminded me that no, in fact, she was planning to travel on her own, so it was very nice of her to allow me to join her on the year that I'm about to talk about. Jumping back into the speech. So we decided that it was time to do something a little bit different. I mean, I knew that I would miss teaching. As an elementary school teacher, my students would make me smile every day. When you're working with younger students, there's always a very good chance that you can have a very exciting conversation with a student about why she chose the furry pen case over the shiny pen case. And it's always fun. But I think I was ready for a change, and me being me, I was curious about what else was out there. So we decided that weekend that on Monday, I would ask the school if I could take a 1-year leave of absence. And so I did. But the school didn't have such a thing. So on Friday, I handed in my letter of resignation. We were going to do it. We were both going to quit our jobs, and as we said it, open new doors and meet new people. Over the course of that year, we ended up visiting 15 different countries. A lot of these places were countries that we had wanted to visit, but weren't able to with busy schedules and other commitments. However, on some of these trips, I actually led 3-day teacher workshops in schools. I was teaching teachers about teaching. In fact, that September, in India, I led 3-week workshops, 3 weekends in a row, in 3 different cities, with time in between for my wife and I to see a bit of the country. When I quit my job, it was with the understanding that there was no guarantee of a position being available when I returned. I was planning to return to teaching, hopefully at the same school, but I was also open to opportunities that might be out there. We were actually driving around the South Island of New Zealand when the new head of school contacted me and asked if I would be interested in a brand new position that they were trying to put together. And so as we finished up our year off, I decided that I would return to the school, but not as an elementary homeroom teacher, but as the communications and public relations coordinator. And that's when some of the thoughts about identity started going through my head. Because if you think of it this way, if I teach, that means that I am a teacher. But if I do communications and public relations, does that mean I am a communicator? A public relator? That doesn't quite fit as smoothly with that whole curious Canadian public relator, curious Canadian communicator. It didn't quite seem to fit, but I was excited about what was about to happen. When I was leading those 3-day teacher workshops, there was a graphic that I would often use, and it said, "The learning pit. It's a great place to be." This concept of the learning pit is one that is used to help students understand that it's normal to struggle with new concepts, and also about the importance of collaborating with those around you so that you can come out the other side of the pit smarter than when you went in. I'm not going to say too much more about this. If you would like to know more about the learning pit, James Nottingham is the guy that you need to go and check out. Take a look at this girl right here. She's the one that's at the top of the learning pit. If you look at the smile on her face, this describes the way a lot of people look at the learning pit, where they're excited to jump in and learn something new and come out smarter on the other side. But I would say that what this graphic doesn't show is some of the other people who interact with the learning pit a little bit differently. Those who might very carefully lower themselves over the edge of the learning pit, looking for a soft place to land and trying to find out very quickly who and what will get them out of there as soon as possible. I think it also doesn't describe some other people who unfortunately are much happier to avoid the learning pit completely. Just content to never learn anything new, I guess. But I would say that if those people were surrounded by someone who really loved them, such as a teacher or a mentor or a family member, they would get what they really need, which is a shove into the pit. A shove with love, of course. I would say that in the new role of communications and public relations, I jumped in with excitement. It was filled with lots of new challenges and skills that I didn't have when I was a homeroom teacher. The chance to learn more about marketing and social media and how to set up a multicam recording so that it looks and sounds great. Good job, tech team. But I think when you're in that pit, it's important that you continue to build knowledge and skills as you go. When I was in some of the darkest times of the learning pit, with that feeling of imposter syndrome coming in, the idea of, I'm a teacher, I'm not a communications person, I'm not sure, and that's when I did probably the worst thing possible. I poked my head out of my learning pit, and I looked over at my teacher friends that were in their own pits, and I said, "Hey, I think I'm in the wrong pit." Yeah, definitely, I'm in the wrong pit. I don't know what this is. I'm supposed to be over there. I'm supposed to be in the teacher pit. That's the pit that I'm much more comfortable with. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. As the non-existent saying doesn't go, the pit is always shallower on the other side. But I was taking a different path. And the pit that I was in felt deeper and darker and lonelier. As a teacher, I had been in and out of many pits. But through all of those pits, the path out the other side was more clear. When you're standing tall and you can see where the path is going, a few pits along the way don't really matter. They don't really bother you. But when you're deep in the pit and you're not sure what the other side is going to bring, it can feel very scary. Think once again about those words that you used to describe yourself at the beginning. Not all of these are possible to change. And every single one of them, I'm sure, is quite challenging. If you had to change one of them, which one would it be? And if you could change, which one would you like to change? Last month, when the TEDx speaker page went up, I looked at my profile and something didn't quite feel right. And so I asked them if they would make a very important change, even if it was just for me. And they did. And it felt much better. It's a small thing, but it meant a lot to me. Am I still a teacher? Well, I suppose that's always going to be an important part of who I am. When you are thinking of what the paths are that you are going to take, I think that it can be very confusing and hard to figure out. But I know for me, thinking of an ending to this speech was challenging. In fact, I changed part of it this morning, sitting over in the corner, because part of me thought that by making some grand statement about what I had learned and where I was going, I was committing myself to some new path. And I don't know where I'm going. And I do know that I have options. You can go back to the former part of your identity. We generally don't close those doors off completely. Or you can continue on that new path that you have chosen. Or maybe there's a third path, another option, something completely different. But it may be that you only have that option if you're open to making that first change. And I think as you're looking at the paths ahead of you, maybe you're afraid to make that change. But it's important to know that it's not only the new paths, but I would say most importantly, it's the new pits that will help show you who you really are. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go take a look at some pits over there. Thank you.